The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept and hold it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata. Today is already the 4th day of this 7-day sesshin here at Mountain Gate in northern New Mexico in June 2019. On a day that looks, as the last couple of days have looked, like we were entering the rainy season already. But so far, the clouds are still quite high. We'll see what happens. Change. Always change. If things didn't change, it would be a pretty stultified life. And yet change is something that people are so frightened of. I remember when my youngest sister went off to college. She's the only one of us that had lived in only the same house the entire up to that point of her life. And all the rest of us, my brother and my other sister, had moved around, particularly my brother and I, quite a bit growing up. And Margaret was concerned about this big change, how it would be for her going off to college. Well, she subsequently turned that into becoming a world traveler, traveling actually probably more than the rest of us, which is pretty amazing, and still travels. Haven't talked to her recently about change or about how frightening it might be to change. She seems to have weathered all kinds of things. Gone camping in India years ago, did an outward bound, what was it, a dog sledding exercise, a couple of weeks of dog sledding up in northern Minnesota, which included 24 hours off on her own out in the snow in the winter. I think this took place in February. And she is pretty accustomed to change. But change still is a challenge for most people. Why? Why could that be? We grow accustomed to a life, to an environment, and beyond that, we grow accustomed to being assumed a certain person, a person with particular characteristics, and along with that goes all kinds of conditioning. As we're born, even from the moment we're born, even through the birthing process, we are conditioned. It's said that children who are born C-section tend quite a bit in the direction of assuming that they have privileges in life, perhaps because they had an easier birth. The rest of us went through a long, tight struggle to come out alive, and sometimes people don't make it out alive. And sometimes when they do make it out alive, they come with some impact of that travel that is physiological, cerebral palsy, or other conditions. But we tend to cling then to circumstances, to identities, to assumptions, and out of that we develop an idea of who we are, which is false, because that's not who we are. Yet, as it is said, is taken for the true person. That false identity, that self-image that we live from, demands attention, demands revenge sometimes, demands aggression sometimes. Certainly it demands to be maintained and upheld and defended. But it's all an illusion. It's simply an accumulation of stories and our conclusions about those stories. So who is the true person? The great Zen master, Chan master really, because he was Chinese, Rinzai, also known as Linji in his Chinese name, said, "There's a true person of no rank coming in and out of the doors of the senses. If you haven't seen it yet, see it now, see it now. In the eyes it is called seeing, in the ears it is called hearing, in the hands it is called holding things, and the feet is called walking, carrying us. If you haven't seen it now, see it now." True person of no rank. A true person of no rank has no description. Nothing to attach to. Simply the eyes seeing, the ears hearing, the tongue tasting, the skin feeling, and thinking. That's what the mind does. And sometimes that's helpful and sometimes it's not. With regard to finding that true person of no rank, thinking is not helpful. It's not of any use whatsoever. In fact, it can be a hindrance, a major hindrance. We have to go beyond thinking, beyond ideas, beyond concepts, in order to find out who we really are. And so today I will continue to share with you from Huang Po's sayings, his teachings as recorded by his student Pei Xu, the government official, and newly translated by Robert Buswell, who was for many years a monk in the Korean Soen tradition. And accordingly, this book comes with an accompanying commentary by a contemporary Soen master, Subul Sunim. We've already started sharing some of this, and we will continue with that today. Sentient beings are attached to appearance and seek outside for the Buddha. But in seeking the Buddha, they lose the Buddha. They make a Buddha look for a Buddha and use the mind to grasp the mind. Even though they exhaust themselves until the end of the eon, they will never be able to get it because it is beyond concepts. This Buddha mind, or mind of awareness, or true nature, whatever you want to call it, it isn't a name, but there's something ineffable that when we open to it is freeing. And the depth of that freedom depends on how deeply we open to the experience of this Buddha mind that we are. But we cannot seek it through thought. It's impossible. Thought will just take us around and around in stories. It's quite ineffective in terms of finding out who you really are. And Subul's commentary on that particular quote: most people are attached to outward appearances and thereby distinguish between various phenomena. However, our eyes cannot see the real characteristics of things. This very mind that looks for the Buddha is the Buddha. Wouldn't it be futile to make a Buddha seek a Buddha? And then Huang Po's commentary again. They do not know that once they stop thinking and forget their pondering, a Buddha will appear right in front of them. stop their thinking. However, it's more like letting go our thinking, because we are so deeply involved in this wordless search within. Then thinking naturally comes to a stop. We don't have to make it stop. And this is an enormous mistake people make. To try to stop thoughts is, well, it's not that easy to do, but it can be done. But what you do, if you're trying to stop thoughts in a particular moment, you're conditioning yourself to stop thinking at any moment. And that's not particularly helpful, because sometimes thoughts are helpful. Sometimes it's a positive experience. It's an appropriate thing to do, to think. It's only that our true mind cannot be found through thought, because it's beyond thoughts, it's beyond stories, it's beyond ideas, it's beyond concepts. And all of that has to be moved beyond, let go of, at least temporarily, in order for us to find that true mind. And of course, when we do find it, if we find it deeply enough, we see through concepts. We see through ideas. And the thinking mind is put back into its logical, natural place, which is not driving everything in our life. So they do not know that once they stop thinking and forget their pondering, a Buddha will appear right in front of them. Subal Sunim comments, if they just turn one thought around, they will normally give up discriminative thinking and empty their minds. When they don't know this fact, people presume they need to seek something and end up entangled in all kinds of discriminative thoughts. But also they should not try to intentionally remove the thoughts that are arising in their minds or stop working away at their practice, misunderstanding the words, stop thinking and forget their pondering. That would not only be foolish, it would also show disdain for the instructions of their spiritual mentors. So again, although it comes down to us through the Japanese Zen instructions to cut our thoughts, what that is a misunderstanding of what is really meant as cut our attachment to thoughts. Thoughts come, thoughts go. Sitting zazen, we hear an occasional car on the road. Rarely do we hear that, given where we are right now, because it's a very deeply quiet place. But we do hear the birds, and earlier today you were quite aware, if you were paying attention, of the sound of the crickets. There's the sound of the wind. That's background noise. We're not engaged in trying to stop the wind so that it becomes more quiet so we can do our practice. We simply don't pay attention to it. And the same can be done with thoughts. We're accustomed to entertaining ourselves with thoughts. We're accustomed to depending on them to have a sense of existing. It's like someone I knew long ago who lived alone in a 3-bedroom house. And she was an older woman, and definitely there was some level of fear in her at some point, because she would get up in the morning, turn on the TV that was in her bedroom, get dressed. Leaving the TV on, she would move into the kitchen, turn on that TV, and the kitchen overlooked the living room where there was another TV, so she'd go around the counter and turn that TV on as well. So she had this constant sense of noise with 3 television sets going on in 3 different parts of the house, 2 of which were so connected that you could glance from one TV to the other without moving. People tend to feel insecure if they don't have some level of noise around them, and that's some level of internal noise. And we do a lot of what Mitra-roshi called thoughting, just drivel, recycling through our minds, bits and phrases of things that people said or thought, and fragments of song or poetry or bits of something that we've read. And it's underlying is a sense of comfort somehow for most people. Yet it keeps us from experiencing the profound silence within. A profound level of peace through which we can experience the sound of the wind. Colorless, but interesting. The sound of the birds. Here this time of year, early in the morning, even before dawn is fully present, the birds are starting to chirp and sing. You can go out on the deck and listen in the deep silence of the morning, other than the birds chirping and singing. It's a miraculous experience when we're not filling it with thoughts and ideas or attention to our little electronic toys, the tablets, the computers, the televisions, the phones. The mind is in fact the Buddha. The Buddha is in fact sentient beings. When it is in sentient beings, this mind is not diminished. When it is in all the Buddhas, this mind is not augmented. The English is a little bit challenging here because it's not like the mind is sometimes in Buddhas and sometimes in sentient beings. The mind is, and yet the mind isn't. Just as Joshu responded to the monk who said, "Does even a dog have the Buddha nature?" This mangy, wild character that was alive in China in that era, centuries ago. Does even that have this pristine purity that we assume Buddha nature is? And Joshu said no. And yet, to another monk at another time, asking the same question, he said yes. And they're both true. This true nature, what is it? Look deeply. And keep looking deeply. And realize that as you're looking deeply, you're going to see every place that you've been caught in conditioning, in assumptions, in behavior that's maybe not so exemplary. And people don't like that. In fact, we try to avoid thinking about it, avoid recognizing it, and the result is often that we project what we can't own in ourselves, in our own behavior. We project it on other people and condemn them for it, all the while creating suffering for everyone involved. Yet, to open to this true mind brings about an ability to see, to experience, to let go. When we've had a deep enough awakening and some habitual habit pattern comes up for some level of behavior that might not be ideal, it's almost as if we have a stop sign that suddenly appears in front of us. Wait a minute, do you really want to go ahead with that behavior? Do you really want to indulge in it again? And it's easy not to go forward with it. It's easy to let it go. And gradually our personality, our way of being is transformed to be more representative of this profound mind that we call the Buddha. This is part of what is known as the long maturation in Zen practice, an essential part of Zen practice, because awakening is only a beginning. And not only that, hopefully you will have many awakenings, deeper and deeper and deeper, seeing into the true nature of everything, seeing more clearly, letting go. But then seeing is the first and most essential step in then living that truth. It's easy to go ahead and ignore it, whatever habit pattern it is, to pretend it doesn't exist. We're accustomed to doing that usually because we don't want to own the more unpleasant aspects of our behavior. But it's essential. If we're truly to call ourselves awakening, and actually someone who is awakened is not going to identify it. They're not going to go around and say, well, I'm awakened. I had this awakening experience, because it's opening to what truly is. It's an of course experience. Of course it's like this. And yet the freedom inherent in letting go is profound and a source of a great deal of joy. Each of us has this inherent in us. If you're listening to this Teisho, you're listening because at some level you yearn to open to that true self. You have a sense that there is something worth seeking beyond the ordinary way of perceiving things. And you can, if you persist. Persisting means sticking with that wordless, yearning search, no matter what it turns up. Openly embracing whatever it turns up. Offering radical acceptance. That means you don't have to buy into whatever it is, but accept the fact that it appears to be appearing. And gradually, it will unfold without realizing it's happening. Letting go is taking place. And of course, we have this incredibly powerful practice to help with that. The extended out-breath, Susokan, as it's called in Japanese, where we tune into our body, we breathe out naturally, and then when we would bring that breath back in naturally as well, instead we take it out further. Not to a point of gasping, but so far that it requires attention and awareness, which requires letting go other things we would concurrently be involved in mind-wise. And all along every breath, we are practicing letting go. Our conditioning, our assumptions, our ideas. The dust that prevents us from seeing who we really are. So we only have a few days left in this sesshin. Give yourself fully. Your capacity has increased because of the work you've done in these almost completely 4 days. Don't let up. Don't let up. We never know when we'll have another chance to encounter a whole week, or even a few days, or even a few hours, when we can do this search in a concentrated manner. So give yourself completely to it. Don't let anything hold back. It will make all the difference in the world. I thank you for listening. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.